Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made it to the 552nd episode, and we're here talking about cannabis and legalization, medical, all aspects of the wonderful planet. I want to say planet, but the plant, the cannabis. I've got Jeremy here with us tonight, and appreciated Jeremy coming in, and you got DanK here. The thing I want to start out with is a great image that I came across, and marijuana is on the ballot. And you can tell by the image that hopefully you've got a marijuana on your ballot just like the one here. But speaking of marijuana on the ballot, I'm going to be signing Measure 91 in the next segment. So stand by for that, because DanK's going to be filling it out on camera. And so 1 week from tomorrow is election day. So get those ballots turned in. If you can help out the Yes on 91, Measure 91 campaign, they could use your help. They're on Oak Street. They're down on 1600 Oak Street, and you could use some help down there.
What Measure 91?
Measure 91, right.
It's 1603 Oak Street.
Yeah, 1603, thank you. And don't forget, felons out there, you can't vote. You've got to be registered, and if you're not registered, then you won't be able to do it this year. But we've got to always remember that. Felons can vote in the state of Oregon. So anyway, I want to talk about the Measure 91, the tax angle. There's been quite a bit of press on it, mainly the registered guard. So the first one I want to talk about was an article that was on October 22nd. Lane County approves pot tax. The Lane County Board of Commissioners on Tuesday voted to impose a countywide tax on marijuana should Oregon voters approve legalization on November 4th. The county's ordinance was approved on a 4-to-1 vote, with Commissioner Pete Sorensen voting no. Thank you, Pete Sorensen. Pete has always been there for the rational thinking people of the county, and the rest of them seem to be business oriented. And anyway, however, ultimately the fate of all marijuana taxes being considered or already approved by local governments across Oregon is unclear. Measure 91 explicitly attempts to bar any local taxation of recreational marijuana. So now we're talking. Now the next article is Registered Guard, October 21st. Eugene says no. Springfield yes to taxing pot. The Springfield City Council unanimously approved a local tax in case Oregon voters legalize the use of recreational marijuana on November 4th. After a brief public hearing on the matter, the Eugene City Council voted 6-2 to stop considering a municipal tax on pot. I think we should drop the whole thing, South Eugene Councilor Betty Taylor said. Eugene and Springfield are among 24 or so cities and counties that have either approved local marijuana taxes before the election or have been considering whether to do so. The Lane, okay, we just talked about Lane County.
Yeah, that's kind of stupid that the cities and the county were both going to tax it.
Exactly, and that's the point that I wanted to bring out on this whole thing, is that the governments, first of all, the majority of these people in the government don't want anything to do with legalization, and you could never get it past them. But it's coming, and they can't stop it, so now they do 180 and decide, well, let's see if we can make some money on it, you know? And which is really egregious, because the law itself says they can't, but they're going to try to do it anyway. Councilman Pryor in Eugene said that he didn't want to oppose local tax. He said that they don't impose a local tax on marijuana and tobacco, so it shouldn't add one for pot. He said, we're already going to get money from the state, and I don't want us to start a new precedent that would lead to local taxes on other items. So thank you, Councilor Pryor. Another little dose of sanity there. South Central Councilor George Brown asked City Attorney Glenn Klein if a city marijuana tax would withstand a court challenge. Klein said a court would probably strike down local pot taxes unless the legislature took action next year to let them stand. Pryor was joined by Councilors Brown, Taylor, Alan Zelinka, Claire Siret, and Mike Clark in voting against advancing the pot tax to another meeting and a possible final vote. So anyway, that's so Eugene got it right for a change. That's kind of a new experience for Eugene too, actually.
Well, that's not surprising when we have a mayor that's in favor of legalized marijuana.
True, yeah, and yes, and she has been a supporter, definitely. And then there's another one, letter and Register Guard, not an article, I mean not a letter, but an article dated October 23rd. What may said and then saying it's called "The Rush to Tax Marijuana." What may look like an unseemly eagerness to tap a new revenue source, however, has a solid rationale. Measure 91 reserves marijuana taxes for the state. After November 4th, the option to tax marijuana at the local level will be gone, and it's reasonable for jurisdictions such as Springfield, Lane County, and others to act in a way that may keep that option alive. So again, this is the editorial from the Register Guard dated the 23rd, "The Rush to Tax Marijuana." Now this is especially interesting. There's a danger that if the aggregate level of taxation is too high, the marijuana economy would remain underground and untaxed.
Exactly.
But when revenue-raising options are limited and unpopular, local governments can't be faulted for doing what they must do to keep a new one open. So I marked that BS. I'll leave that interpretation, but up for everything. But anyway, so it says others believe that the local taxes would be grandfathered in, which explains why a few dozen cities and counties around Oregon have adopted marijuana taxes. A circuit court judge in Josephine County recently ruled that state law does not preempt municipal bans on medical marijuana dispensaries, which would suggest that arguments for local control would prevail in an inevitable lawsuit over city and county pot taxes. If Measure 91 passes, the one thing they won't be able to do after November 4th is adopt a new marijuana tax. Cities and counties are rushing to get through the door that's about to close. So as far as not being able to get the tax after the thing passes, again, it's up to the legislature, and frankly, I don't trust them any further than I could throw them. They made it very clear in the last, well, ever since 1997 when we enacted the medical marijuana program, the legislature as a whole has been trying to weaken the medical marijuana program and have done little for patients other than they were real good about increasing fees and doubling fees. They've been real good about that. So when the legalization comes in, here it's going to be another interesting time in the legislature. This is an interesting editorial from the Medford Mail Tribune. Excuse me. Our view: cost is a poor excuse for local pot tax. Measure 91 says a local state marijuana law designed to operate uniformly through the state shall be paramount and superior to, and shall fully replace and supersede any and all municipal charter enactments or local ordinances inconsistent with it. Such charters and ordinances hereby are repealed. That sounds clear enough to us, but it hasn't stopped cities and counties across the state from enacting taxes in hopes of being grandfathered in. And this is what we talked about before. The sudden desire of local tax officials to tax recreational marijuana, we suspect, is motivated more by opposition to legalization than by any desire to capitalize on a new retail industry. That's it. I mean, this is fantastic. Basically what I've been suspecting all along, and it's the first time I've seen it in print from, that's amazing. They hit it right spot on. It's fine to have concerns about the unknown consequences of legalizing marijuana use, and we share some of those concerns. The legislature might need to make changes in the law as circumstances warrant. But it's hard to see how Measure 91 would impose any significant costs on local governments that they don't already incur. Police now spend time and resources chasing illegal marijuana growers and sellers. It's logical to suppose that burden would be less under legalization. Collecting and enforcing a sales tax, however, would represent new costs to the county and to local municipalities. The tax rate written into Measure 91 was certainly carefully calculated to keep the retail price low enough so that it wouldn't encourage more black market sales. Piling local option taxes on top of that could have that unintended effect. The marijuana taxes are considered low-hanging fruit by officials in some cities and counties where they, where they would not expect to get pushback from the usual anti-tax crowd. That and their opposition to marijuana in the first place seem to be feeling the rush to pump up the price of pot. But if the statewide measure passes, they owe it to their constituents to prove their case before piling on with more taxes and bureaucracy. So, congratulations, Medford Mail Tribune. They got it right also. And they haven't always been real accurate. So, that's a great job. So
that's actually surprising coming from Medford.
This is. You bet. So yeah,
they've got it right. All these extra taxes are just going to drive it into the black market even farther than it is now.
Exactly. Colorado and Washington are there right now. They're taxing it so heavily that it costs more to buy it in the store legally than it does on the street in the black market. So, hello, that's, but anyway. So, go ahead and you got a letter to the editor. We got the time to get that in.
Pot tax proponents are hypocrites. This isn't hypocritical of some of the small towns in Oregon that opposed the opening medical marijuana dispensaries to want to tax the drug. Now they want to be able to sell marijuana to everyone who wants it. That's greed, plain and simple. But that's going to require opening dispensaries or allowing local businesses to sell marijuana alongside bread and milk. Well, it's not going to be alongside bread and milk. It's going to be regulated in a separate store. One need look no farther than the local government to see who the hypocrites are. It amazes me how ridiculous people have been in trying to keep medical marijuana out of the hands of patients who need it. I'm hoping Measure 91 passes on November 4th and the state puts a limit on the amount of taxes greedy communities will be allowed to collect. Jim and Pula, Myrtle Point.
That's right. So that's a great letter. The letter to the editor from the Register Guard. It was in the paper on the 21st of October. So yes, all good points, and basically what we've been saying that the governments are kind of going to shoot themselves in the foot, but then they're good at that. So I wanted to talk real quick about the DanK's Garden. Remember, it shows 539, 546, and 550. So go to YouTube and look at Eugene Cannabis TV and look up the episodes and check out the garden. It was a dandy. We'll be right back.
I'm a doctor.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a journalist.
I'm a student.
I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself.
I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this.
We can stop this.
We are the American people,
We can stop this.
and you have our support.
We're old,
Young.
straight.
Gay.
We're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it.
Apply age restrictions.
You can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We.
Can.
This has been a public service announcement.
Welcome back to Eugene Cannabis TV. We're at episode 552, and we have a special guest. We have Elvy Musikka. Elvy lives with us here in Eugene now. You were in Florida, and then moved back up to Oregon, right?
Yeah, I go visit Florida at least once a year, especially now that they're working on a medical marijuana initiative as well.
Yeah, Elvy is let's see, I keep saying one of the 4 remaining, but you said you're the last one receiving.
There are actually 2 of us still
Okay.
receiving it. Irvin Rosenfeld, a stockbroker, a male, successful businessman, and myself. The other 2 are still in the program. However, there is no doctor that has been approved for them, so they're not getting it these days.
Oh, okay.
And they live in the Midwest, and we're hoping somebody will pop up and say that they will fill out the tremendous amount of paperwork and work with the DEA and FDA and NIDA and prove to all 3 agencies that marijuana is the most efficient, the most reliable, and the safest part of our treatment. That's all you got to do, is prove all of that to all of those agencies, and then maybe they'll let you in, but I don't think so, because the program's been closed since '92.
Wow. Yeah, so Elvy still receives her medical marijuana, or federal issued medical marijuana.
Right.
And the quality now at this point is what?
Well, it's just unpredictable.
Okay. Yeah, it's up and down, up and down.
Consistent.
Yeah.
As you know, 2 years ago they sent me some hemp, and I love wearing hemp, but it really doesn't do anything for my glaucoma. It ended up costing you guys a lot of money, and I lost some sight, and I really couldn't afford to lose that.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that was pretty horrible.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so Elvy goes to, has gone to a lot of the major cannabis events, as a political activist, as a patient. And so we're lucky to have her here today, and we talk about Measure 91. So what did you think, what are you thinking about what we talked about taxing? Think it ought to be taxed?
Oh, no, absolutely. You're never going to pass it if you don't tax it. We're lucky they're actually listening to that argument at last. We've been making it for what now? I think Normal's been making it since the 70s. I've been involved since the mid-80s, and you guys have been passing laws before that. So, you know, that's the mind-blowing part that really gets me, is there really are hundreds of thousands of us who have been working at this for decades, who have definitely been paying the price to make sure that these laws are changing. And I am so proud to be a part of that segment of society, because you have, in spite of the intimidation and the frustration and the fact that they have incarcerated 25 million of us, you have continued the fight, and you now are making sure that this beautiful state of Oregon is going to have it for all of us that are over 21, and of course someday we'll understand what it really is and stop putting restrictions on it, period. But for now, all I can say is thank you, because you are making an effort. Thank you for getting the funding. Thank you for sitting there every day with the fund banks at 1603 Oak Street. We're going to be looking for you every evening there, and on the weekend to help us make those calls right up to the last minute. We want everybody to get out and vote on 91. You have an opportunity to show the world that you understand that this prohibition is unaffordable at every level. Financially, you cannot afford it. Environmentally, it's a disaster to keep hemp illegal. Constitutionally, stop breaking my heart by breaking through people's private front door and doing all the things that are anti-constitutional. We cannot afford to keep this prohibition. Thank you, because I know you're making the changes.
That's right. And some people are against Measure 91, and the majority of the time people I hear have something that they've heard about it that's not true. For instance, one of them is that it'll put more young people in jail, and no, it's not true. It will not improve the situation as it is now. The law now is putting young people in jail, and it just does not change that. So that's a fallacy. It will not affect the Oregon medical marijuana law. It states, that I was told in 3 different places, it states it in the law that it will not affect the Oregon medical marijuana program. We need to move forward. And speaking of Measure 91, there was something I wanted to, Elvy, I hadn't had a chance to talk to you about this, but I think you'll find this really interesting, and I really need to get this out here. Remember I told you about the education tour that they tried to do in the state and ended up having to cut it back? Well, there was a lady by the name of Mandy Puckett, and she's the director of the No on 91 campaign. Well, this is from a blog that was written by Josh Jardine. It was in the Portland Mercury on the 22nd of October. Now this is the really, on October 12th, Portland radio Russ Bellevue released a memo on his website regarding Puckett and her statements. It cites an email from Clatsop District Attorney Josh Markey, who wrote, "The OSSA, Oregon State Sheriff's Association, paid for virtually all of the anti-91 deals." Well, you see, yeah, in fact, I got ahead of myself here. Puckett is a former certified prevention specialist with Best Care Treatment Services, a drug and alcohol rehab center with multiple locations around the state. She left to become the coordinator of the No on 91 campaign. And she came under fire when Earl Blumenauer called for a federal investigation to determine if federal tax dollars were being used illegally to influence a statewide election. That's that education tour I was talking about. Puckett was involved in a proposed series of 13 marijuana education events. Those are the ones I was talking about. But Blumenauer wrote, "The bias of the speakers selected, the overall one-sided focus of the events, and the proximity between these events and the upcoming elections are cause for concern. Majority of the events were eventually canceled." So anyway, so of the 13, like I said, let's see, what was that?
Five are still going.
Yeah. Anyway, the thing is that the No one, they were all paid for by the same person. That's the whole point of that. I'm stumbling around, but yeah, that was I thought it was, and that's the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, and they're supposed to think of law enforcement as being up and proper and telling the truth. They also sent out a flyer that's full of lies about marijuana and Measure 91, and they distributed it. So we still out there, and like I wrote on Facebook, the one thing that we do have and they don't have is the truth. We have the truth and they don't.
Yeah, and that seems to be the one that's the hardest and they cannot conquer. They are the reason we are winning. You know, we had 6 generations, the first 4, which just lies and misinformation, but by the time the 90s came around, we were already educating, and everything we were learning, we were passing on to others, and those efforts really helped. And whether you were working with a very proper organization like Drug Policy Alliance, which has done wonderful work, or the normal people, or activists on the ground, we were all working towards the same goal. And now we're beginning to see turning around. Keep it up, keep it up. Thank you for all the work, and just don't stop now, please. And please, don't be a traitor and vote against this. It's taken too much. It's taken real blood. There are several of us who were here at the beginning of this fight 20 years ago who have been buried, and their big sin was wanting marijuana legal. Please, help us end this war for once and for all.
Exactly, and here it is. There were 12 statements in the voters' pamphlet against Measure 91. 8 of them were written by Mandy Puckett. 8, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, and if you look at the voters' pamphlet, the 4 is amazing. It's like 8 pages or something, and there's only a few pages of the No, and it turns out that she picked up 8 of the 12 of them. So,
yeah.
You know, it's like a couple years ago, the City Club had a debate on the drug war. They wanted to have a debate on the drug war, the benefits, or whether it had been worth it or not. And so, by default, Madeline Martinez had agreed to come on as speaking against the drug war. She backed out at the last minute, so they asked me to do it, and I said fine. And so then they contacted me and said that they couldn't find anybody to speak for the drug war, and they wanted to know if I knew anybody, which cracked me up, because they couldn't even find anybody to speak for it.
Right.
And then he asked me for suggestions on who to get. But anyway, yeah, it was an interesting debate, but it was pretty interesting, especially the City Club and all, and they're pretty good people there, and so anyway, so back to Florida. Now, Florida is working on trying to get a medical marijuana.
It's interesting this should come up now, because this is the end of October, which signifies to me personally 26 years of being legal, and that became possible out of the state of Florida because I won a lawsuit that I was represented to Norman Kent, who is now the director of NORML, and I had the backing of the whole state of Florida. And we won the case back in August of '88, but in October of '88, I actually received that famous tin with the marijuana cigarettes. We were able to present it to the public, and that's how the year ended. And here we go, 26 years later, they're still hoping to get it legal for everyone else. I've had the right to possess and cultivate in Florida on a medical defense for 26 years, but their citizens do not. And they're looking for a 60% approval. That means if you live in Florida, please help those folks. Si habla español, por favor, comuníquese con la comunidad cubana y ayude todo lo que puedan. And if you're into the religious thing, please get in touch with some serious people who can show you that it is all over the Bible. And remember, all good Bibles are made out of hemp, cannabis, the stuff you call marijuana.
That's right. I don't know if you know too much about Mexican, but do you know the what's that saint that protects drug dealers? There's a saint.
San Lázaro?
I don't know. Is that
I don't know. The Cubans have them in all their front yards, so it did in the 80s.
Yeah, the Mexicans have one. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a specific saint, but protect them. But anyway, well, we appreciate you coming on. And when are you going back to Florida now?
Oh no, I'm not. I'm
here.
here.
Okay.
I am here for our elections. I definitely want to celebrate. This is monumental. This is a dream come true. Sometimes I get very discouraged because it's taken forever. But if you really stop and think about it, 20 years ago there wasn't one single state that was legal, and you have made it happen. Hundreds of thousands of you are dedicated, loving people, and I'm happy to be part of your family, because that is my real family.
Yes, Oregon in 1973, the first state to decriminalize possession of less than an ounce. Thank you, Governor McCall.
That was before I was even smoking.
Good night. We'll see you next week.